Greetings, travelers. It's me, that guy who makes videos talking about jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. There are often divisions in the community for how to enjoy the game properly. Some enjoy the plot, some enjoy fishing, some enjoy RPing, some enjoy raiding. No one enjoys the 1,000 Maws of Total Rock, but one debate truly plagues the community. Which job makes you more of a weeaboo? Is it samurai or ninja? Nothing gets people more heated than talking about the difference between the two weeb melee DPS classes. Except most people just level everything anyways. I will say my piece to end the debate though. Ninja starts as a rogue, which is more of a thief class, and turns into a weeb job, while samurai is a weeaboo all the way through. And no, we will never get thief in Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV hasn't been good since Final Fantasy I. To begin, I will start by talking about the most important thing about ninja. It's Doton. Yeah, good old Doton. Why does every ninja player use Doton in single target? I'm not sure if this is a social paradigm where people just see other ninja players doing this and assume that it has to be good, so let me tell you right now. Doton is an AoE skill that you use when fighting at least 2 enemies. The only acceptable use for it in single target is in pre-pull as part of an opener before you are in combat. If you are already in combat, do not use Doton. I will put an asterisk here. It can be a DPS increase in very specific circumstances, but that's beyond the scope of this video. However, I will say this much. If you consistently use Doton throughout a fight, it is absolutely a DPS loss. If I catch you casting Doton on single target in combat, I'm going to look at you the same way that my father looks at me when he realizes I got another Nekopara figure, with immense disappointment. Once you know this permitted knowledge, you will never be able to unsee the sheer amount of players who do this. And for that, my apologies. What people actually think of when they see ninja is one thing. Okay, maybe that, but also Toriku Otaku. It's rare to see a job defined almost entirely by a single skill, but ninja quite literally uses trick attack every minute and your party loves you. Or you drift the cooldown and become the enemy of mankind. This is because it applies a debuff to the boss that makes it take 5% more damage for 15 seconds. Every job in the game has some way to take advantage of the additional damage Trick Attack provides, and it has been the cornerstone of Ninja's design since the beginning. Ninja itself wants to shove as many of its big damage skills under Trick Attack as possible to do the most damage that it can. This is Ninja's greatest strength and greatest weakness. You do most of your mashing in Trick Attack windows, and then you chill until the next Trick Attack. Some people love it because you get to relax 75% of the time, while others hate it because it's boring to them. This does give you a good idea of the type of gameplay you can expect when you pick this job up. Now that I explained the only thing that matters, I will give you some useless information. Despite being a class that starts at level 1, you cannot start the game as a ninja or a rogue. This is because it was not added in the initial release of A Realm Reborn, but added in a patch cycle, throwing the game balance into chaos. In order to unlock Rogue, you must unlock it in Limsa Lominsa, after reaching at least level 10. To overcome the obstacle of moving between cities at the start of the game, if you are fresh and you are dead set on being a ninja as soon as possible, you want to start the game as either a Marauder or an Arcanist, to have the quickest access to abandoning your starting class and picking up Rogue, which will evolve into Ninja when you get a Soulstone at level 30. The thing you will realize quickly is how early you unlock Trick Attack, and then immediately get confused because it doesn't allow you to use it unless you are hidden, and you can't hide in combat. To be able to actually Trick Attack at all, you will need to have all 3 of your Naruto moves. Ten, Chai, and Jin are GCDs with quick cooldowns that will allow you to unleash a ninjutsu, depending on the combination utilized. This can be a bit confusing when you first pick up the job, but the easiest way to think about it is, unlike what you have been told, mudras are not about the journey, it's all about the destination. When inputting your codes, you will never tap one of these buttons more than once, or it will explode into a rabbit and show the whole world that you're a fucking idiot. To avoid this, don't mash these inputs because it is easy to accidentally buffer a double input that you don't want. I will start by teaching you how to cast Suiton. To be able to unleash Suiton, you need to use a 3-button combo ending in Jin without repeating any buttons. So in other words, Tenchi Jin or Chi Ten Jin. While you do have options to achieve the exact same desired outcome, just stick to the same pattern every time you use a ninjutsu skill for consistency. I always use Tenchi Jin for Suiton, because these are also the same inputs required for a different skill later, and building the correct muscle memory is good practice. Also, come on, 1, 2, 3 is super easy and brain dead, and you know how I am when I get a chance to do some brain dead gameplay. After you build up your spell, press ninjutsu to cast Suiton, dealing damage and giving you a buff for 20 seconds that will be consumed to let you cast Trick Attack. When using Trick Attack, make sure you hit the rear for the extra potency, and be thankful that you no longer have to hit this positional to apply the debuff. With that, you're now ready to succeed. You might think that there has to be more to playing ninja than this, and there is. But for now, if you manage to Trick Attack on the minute mark, you're already better than 82.3% of the ninja players in this game, which coincidentally is the percentage of people who watch my content but aren't subscribed. Please don't subscribe, I want to be left alone. Alright, I'll explain the rest of mudras. There are 2 additional 3-button Konami codes on Ninja. Using Jin Chi 10, or Chi Jin 10, will allow you to cast Hut Ton, which is your DPS buff that you cast a single time and then refresh using Amuru Koroshu after level 54. Although if you die, you will have to cast Huton again, idiot. Just use your Armor Crush combo when you have less than 40 seconds remaining on the buff, and never die, and you'll never have to cast this again, depending on if the boss pieces out or not. The other 3-button skill is Dotan, which I've talked about before, but this puts down a little field that does damage when it comes out, and also every server tick. To properly cast Dotan, use Jin Tenchi, because this will be used for something later, and you have now learned all 3-button mudra combos. For 2-button combos, we also have Rai-Tun. Rai-Tun is a 2-button combo ending in Chi. I just use Tenchi for this. It is a single target nuke. It does big single target damage. It's what you use on a single target. Katan. Katan is a 2-button combo ending in 10. I use Chi 10 for this. It is an AoE bomb that does big damage to multiple things. You use this anytime over Raiton if you can hit at least 2 things. Finally, you have Hyoton, which you don't use until you get a trait at level 76 because it's just shitty Raiton that does shitty damage. However, as you can probably guess, Hyoton is a 2-button combo ending in Jin. I use Chi Jin for this. Finally, you have a skill that you can use if you press a single mudra called useless skill Fuma Shuruken. Don't use Fuma Shuruken. Although your eyes are probably glazed over now just thinking about all of those combos, the only thing you actually have to know how to use on level 80 single target are Huton, Suiton, Hyoton, and Raiton. I have now trained you up enough to get you into an opener, because once you learn this opener, you have pretty much mastered the class. We begin with before combat. About 10 to 12 seconds before the boss is pulled, you want to use Huton. Now, if you want to be extra spicy, you can also pre-pull with Dotan about 7 seconds before combat just by putting this down close-ish to the boss without pulling aggro. This is because we are going to immediately use Haido, which will give us all of our mudra stacks back. This pre-pulled Dotan is essentially free if your tank pulls the boss into it. At the same time, you don't really lose anything if Dotan is not taken advantage of. You don't have to use this in pre-pull at all, but in coordinated environments, you might as well try. No, do not use Dotan in single target if you are already in combat. That is not what we are doing in this opener. Whether you use Dotan or not, in pre-pull, you will always get your mudra charges back with Hide. Ensure that you get Suiton ready so that you can use it at the start of combat immediately by using it right at the battle timer hitting 0. Keep in mind, all ninjutsu skills are ranged. It's not hard to time the skill because you don't have to immediately be in melee range. We then weave Kassastsu. Use Spinning Ueji. This is when you can weave a damage pot. Use Gusto Slashu. And double weave Mogu. And Bunshin. Use Aeolian Edge. Make sure to get the rear positional and stay there because we then use Spinning Edge and weave Trick Attack. use Shadoru Fengu, which is what you always use immediately following Trick Attack, and weave Dorimo within the Dorimo. We now use the same input for Hyotan, but since we weave Kassastsu and we are above level 76, it will instead cast Hyosho Ran Ryu. We then weave Assassinato, which has a stupidly long animation lock. We then use Raiton after your preferred Mudra input, and weave Tenchi Jin, not to be confused with Tenchi Jin. You will also want to remain still for this to work. You now press Ten, Chi, and Jin, in that order. And after pressing Jin, which will have used Suiton, you then weave Me Sui. Then use Gust Slash and weave Bava Kakra. Then use Aeolian Edge and weave Bava Kakra again. Trick Attack will fall off, and you now get to use another Raiton. That only took like a million tries for me to get right, and also a million tries to obliterate all the pronunciations. Now that we are past the opener, I can explain the rest of this nonsense. Tenchi Jin is a skill that can be a bit weird at first, but what it does is turn your mudras into true GCDs that will execute the ninjutsu as if you had done the combo. So in the case of the opener, after you press Tenchi Jin and pressing the actual Tenchi Jin, it will cast Fuma Shuriken, Raiton, and then Suiton. Since Suiton doesn't do anything for you because you already use Trick Attack, that is why Misui is used to give you some meter so that you can use Bava Kakra again. This is the proper single target Tenchi Jin combo. In terms of how much damage you do, Tenchi Jin is massive. What is stupid about Tenchi Jin is that you will drop the Tenchi Jin effect if you move at all while it is active. So you do actually have to plan your movement out for when you use this skill a little bit. It is thankfully completely ranged, although you will already be in melee range anyways because of where it is placed after Trick Attack. So the proper way to use Tenchi Jin is to use Tenchi Jin. Makes sense, right? Another thing I skimmed over is Kassastsu. What this actually does is give you another use of ninjutsu, until level 76, where it will also augment 2 ninjutsu skills. It also boosts the damage of the ninjutsu skill that you cast with this. This changes Hyotan into Hyosho Ryanryu, which is your big PP, potency power, move. Or it will change Katan into Goko Mech Yaku, your big PP AoE skill. Yeah, that's about it. Hyotan by itself is useless 99% of the time, unless you are running Palace of the Dead and actually need to stop a mob in place. But in something more niche like dungeons, raids, trials, and basically everything else in the game, including fishing, Hyotan sucks, but Hyosho Ryanryu is good. And in AoE, Goka Mekyaku is very strong. Why you see Kassastsu weave so early in the opener is that you get the buff for 15 seconds after use, meaning you have a good amount of time to hold on to the buff before using it. And that's a very simple look at Kassastsu, which is enough to get you off the ground. Although if you are not level 76 yet, you will use Kassastsu to use Raiton on single target, and Kassastsu on Doton for multi-target, but I don't really make these as leveling guides. The other thing that might throw you off a little bit is that we Trick Attack after 4 GCDs into the opener. While you can Trick Attack slightly earlier because it doesn't affect you, it is delayed this way so that it is better for all classes, especially ones that take a little bit longer to reach their burst. Please let me burst in Trick Attack as a samurai player, it gives me the happy chemicals. With the opener out of the way, I'm going to explain the filler. You have 2 3-button combos. The only thing that changes is the 3rd button. Armor Crush is a flank positional that extends Hutan by 30 seconds. Use this if you have less than 40 seconds remaining on your buff. Otherwise, use Aeolian Edge, which is a rear positional. Although I have covered positionals many times before, in most detail in my Dragoon guide, they have made a few UI updates since then. Arrows on the side of the enemy now show you what direction it's facing, if you're confused about the orientation of the boss depending on the angle that you're looking at it from. In addition to seeing a full circle around the enemy with no slice in the back, if you see an arrow not sticking out at the front and instead is also within that circle, that means the enemy does not have positionals. With normal positionals, you typically want to be right on the edge of this slice in the back so that it is easy to access both the flank and the rear. But what I never mentioned in detail before is that you can move into the boss's hitbox and be almost dead center, and it still counts as a flank or a rear, which is why it's like a pizza slice. it is still considered to be part of the slice even if you're right at the tip. This can be randomly helpful when running Pagalathon and the boss decides to go hang out in the wall for a little bit and you're just waiting for it to move back to a more normal position. As a final note about ninja filler, if you are unable to hit a rear, but you can hit a flank and you don't have Toru Nosu, it's better to hit the positional on Armor Crush than to miss a positional on Aeolian Edge, regardless of how much time remains on Hutan. Ninja Filler also gives you meter that can be spent on Bavakakra or Bunshin. Bunshin is on a 90-second cooldown, so it doesn't really line up with anything. That's nice, and you do want to ensure that you use it on cooldown. Otherwise, though, you can pretty much use Bavakakra when you get 50 meter. It's not like I need to save meter to optimize more around trick attack, right? That's really all there is to Ninja Filler. It's not a whole lot, and also very similar to a certain tank job. What is actually important, though, are your burst windows. This is where Ninja does the majority of its damage, and thankfully, it's not super hard since you have definitely practiced that opener and you're ready to go. We first begin with Suiton again. You want to cast Suiton when Trick Attack has less than 20 seconds on the cooldown and before you gain 2 stacks of Mudra. That makes it sound a lot more complicated than it is. You have a pretty solid window to land this Suiton without worry of drifting any cooldown. You will also want to weave Kassastsu sometime before Trick Attack as well. The opener is what a burst window will look like if you have Tenchi Jin up, also known as every other trick attack. Your goal is to land Shadow Fang, Dream Within a Dream, Hyosho Ryanryu, Assassinate, Raitan, Tenchi Jin, and a couple filler combo actions along with some Bavakakra, all in trick attack. Past the opener, you will be able to land another Raitan in a trick attack window where you use Tenchi Jin. When you don't have Tenchi Jin, you just want to land everything else except just use fillers for the rest of trick attack. That's it for burst windows, and coincidentally, every cooldown that you have to keep track of. Except Bunshin. That is on a 90-second cooldown, so you have to randomly use it when it doesn't line up with Trick Attack every other cast. You also want to be careful not to use one too many Bavakakras in a Trick Attack window, so that you would not have enough meter to use it on cooldown. And also, make sure that you don't overcap your meter every 2 minutes for Mug. Even though Mug does damage, you don't typically put it in a trick attack window. I'm not going to optimize these down to a crazy level, but that is enough to get you to start practicing everything that you need to click every minute.
Actually, you need to drift trick attack sometimes because it has better alignment with phases.
Shut up. This isn't a nerd guide. This is a ninja guide. Once you get the opener down, all of these burst windows will fall into place pretty well. Of course, though, I need to help you speedrun some dungeons. Your filler GCD AoEs become good at 3 or more enemies. Use Dettubrasumu followed by Hakke Minji Satsu for damage and keeping up Hutan. Spend meter on Hellfrogumidiamu, which is a gain on 2 enemies over Bavakakra, and use Katan for normal ninjutsu and Goka Mekyaku for Kassastsu ninjutsu during AoE, which they both have the exact same input, thankfully. For Tenchi Jin in AoE, you want to pop it and press Jin Tenchi. This will cast Fuma Shuriken, a Katan, and finish by shitting out a Doton where you stand for even more AoE swag points. Use Bunshin on AoE filler as well because it is just free damage. Since you do a lot of burst, you can melt trash packs pretty quickly depending. Ninja AoE skills also don't really have damage fall off, which is fucking nuts compared to pretty much everything else in the game. If you are fighting lots of enemies though, Trick Attack is not usually worth it since it only applies to a single target. Also remember to reset your Mudra cooldowns using Hide in between pulls for even more points, and Mug will give you meter for either Bunshin or Hellfrog Medium. And that's really all there is to speedrunning dungeons. I might as well mention some other ninja utility. Shado Shifto is a cooldown that gives you a shield. Use it to reduce some damage once in a while. Anzurenksu will prevent most knockback and draw in effect, and it will also double as a tank cooldown for boring mobs. Shakachi is a ground targeted teleport that cannot bring you across a bottomless pit. You get 2 charges and also gain a charge every minute, although you also gain a charge after casting any 2-button ninjutsu. Some people like to use a macro to dash to what you are targeting. Just note that this macro will teleport you to the center of the target's hitbox, which means it can artificially make Shikuchi's range shorter because it's trying to teleport you further than it needs to. Overall, having the option to manually target in addition to the macro variant is probably best. True North will eliminate positional requirements when you need it, and Trick Attack is your biggest potency loss if you miss a positional. Just keep that in mind. Blood Dubasu and Second Window can help you heal back up and relieve pressure from your healers or make up for your healers dying. Vento will reduce physical damage from a single enemy, which is hardly ever useful, and Legu Suipo can stun stunnable enemies. Of course, how could I forget the most important thing? Ninjas also passively move faster and take less fall damage than all other jobs. For one last thing to add, multiple ninjas cannot stack Trick Attack together. So when you have more than one ninja, it becomes a game of chicken for who overrides whose Trick Attack. I'd avoid this if you can, but when playing with randoms, just try to stagger Trick Attacks to the best of your ability to not be miserable. As for coordinated play, don't bring more than one ninja. With that, you are done. I used to dislike this job when I first picked it up, but honestly, it's pretty alright. There's a certain charm to the downtime that I just wish they would fully embrace at this point, and put Bunshin on a 2-minute cooldown or a minute cooldown to make it fully embrace its minute timer identity. While it certainly isn't going to be the job for everyone, I like that it's not super hard to pick up past the opener. Before the more recent rework, Ninja used to be very difficult, but it's much more consistent and easier to pick up than it ever has been in the past. As long as Trick Attack exists, Ninja will always bring value to a party. Now let's get out there and lag while inputting ninjutsu and question our sanity.